inside the mind, viewing from a distance, everything appears fine, but inside the mind, but inside the mind, but inside the mind.
This week on New to You, we talk about the wonderful record by the Steve Miller Band called Book of Dreams, and we talk about the mysterious artist Matthew Barney.
His mom made you love him, but he really couldn't see, while his dad tweaked his brain saying who he needs to be. Didn't have toys to play with, just paper in his work. No friends to be around, and yes, separation hurts. These are the memories as he starts every morning like a well-trained soldier. He makes up his bed, goes take a shower, comb brush the head, his clothes well hung.
Welcome to another episode of the New to You show. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week is...
I'm Mary Varn.
Joining us again.
I'm Jules Koetsch.
And I'm Keith Vincent, one of your other hosts.
All right. So let's kick things off with our staple. Keith, what was new to you this week?
New to me this week is scuba diving. I went and got certified here in Manhattan to open water scuba dive, and it's a blast. It's really fun. And once I get this water out of my ears, it's going to be even more fun.
You didn't get the bends?
No, but apparently that is a real problem.
Yeah, Radiohead didn't make that up.
No. Well, the bends is a problem, and then there's like there are different kinds of gas poisoning you can get, and there's all sorts of maladies that you could get from scuba diving if you don't do it right.
Yeah, that terrifies me.
Yeah,
especially when using Mexican quality.
Well, if you stay below 60 feet deep, it shouldn't be any problems.
I mean, a lot of the complications.
You should still go up slowly, but your risks are pretty minimal.
Did you do this because you're going to Mexico soon to get married?
That's true. I am, because I'm going to get married, and I wanted to be able to scuba dive. Yeah. Well, there's a specific, and I'll save this for another episode, but there's a specific thing off the coast of Cancun, Mexico, where some awesome artist did about 30 statues of different people, like just as normal, regular day people, like reading newspapers and sitting on the subway, and sunk them underwater. So now the plant life is the reef and the underwater plant life is it's making it a part of the environment. It's supposed to be really neat. So I intend to explore that.
Cool.
So
can you wear earplugs or something?
No, you not while you're no, because air has to go in and out of your ears as you're going up and down, or else you get a squeeze or a reverse squeeze.
Interesting.
Can you fly? Like, do you have to wait 24 hours or something?
Yeah. Well, it's recommended at least 18, but rule of thumb is 24 hours. Cool. But that's generally for people who have been deep diving. What I'm going to be doing isn't going to be... I doubt I'll break 40 feet. Yeah, cat. So what was new to you, Holt?
New to me is that I received one of my kick-started projects, which is from an artist who is based here in, I think, Bushwick now. But basically he makes this terrain stuff, and he makes like high-quality ones, but he did this whole... kit of terrain that's sort of like this dwarvenite, they're calling it. It's basically like a proprietary plastic that is like
proprietary to this artist.
Well, yeah, they kind of came up with the formula to use for this stuff, but basically they like ran them over with a truck and they just kind of go back to their shape.
Really?
So they're super sturdy and pretty rough and tumble,
which is important for those rowdy D&D sessions.
Yeah. And you can, they're
John, I think
unpainted.
I've seen you've bought the,
I have
this
molds.
is the same guy that does the molds of this.
No, it's a different guy.
Okay. But they look very similar.
They'll be compatible. So I'll use them together. So
neat. So what's the name of the thing?
It's called Dwarven Forge. The guy who does it is Stefan, his name starts with a P. I don't want to butcher it, but it's a guy, Stefan, at Dwarven Forge. So they did a whole Kickstarter to kind of get the molds and the first run of this sort of more accessible run done, because he does ones that are resin cast in shorter runs that he'll hand paint, and they have finer quality because they're hyper detailed and he's very exacting.
Plus it's heavier and more expensive and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just much more expensive. It's also more fragile.
With this, could you paint on this material?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
With
and I got some paints with it, so you just kind of dry brush on a little bit.
Acrylic.
Yeah, it's like a house. Yeah, it's like a house acrylic, so water based.
So if you're into making little models for your tabletop games, that happen to be dungeon or castle themed, that's the place to go.
Maybe Banksy, I'll tag it and make it super valuable.
Oh, Banksy, get off my dungeon table. That's right. So Mary, what about you? What was new to you this week?
I watched the new CW show, Reign.
Is it like Smallville in the 17th century?
Reign, Reign, like reign of, yeah.
Yeah, it's based on Mary, Queen of Scots. And we did our...
Oh, and you love the Tudors.
Yeah, we did our Guilty Pleasures episode not long ago, and this is like maybe the epitome of a guilty pleasure because I feel way guiltier about the fact that I watched both of the episodes that were out, and I do want to watch the third episode.
Well, maybe it's good. Maybe you shouldn't.
No.
I
don't know.
Nope.
But there's a lot less nudity than in the Tudors show.
Yeah, but there's some
TV,
sauciness.
Oh, saucy.
They get some sauciness. She's like this, whatever, proper young queen woman, but then she has her ladies in waiting who are basically just like the Gossip Girls, and they're wearing like, things that were totally inappropriate for the time, like no shoulder or sleeve gowns. One of them pounces around in the kitchen with a skirt that's above her knees. Yeah.
Scandalous.
Whores and wenches.
Hey, be careful what you're saying. That's the Queen's friends.
Oh, that's true. Sorry.
That'll get you beheaded there.
It's not proper, Keith.
Yeah, well, tell it to the Queen.
But Jules, what was new to you?
New to me was I went to see the live show of Radiolab, my second favorite podcast after this one, of course. So it was like an episode of the podcast, but live, and it was at the Beacon Theater in New York, which is a very cool old theater, and it was really cool. They had live musicians doing atmospheric sounds, and a video artist who was projecting stuff, and I
bet they don't have cats doing atmospheric sound effects in the background.
It's true, they didn't. But they had a guy in cool puppet and cool dinosaur outfits and with dinosaur puppets and stuff, because it was called Apocalypto or something like that, and it's about endings is sort of the theme, and so the dinosaur extinction was a big part of the show, and it was really cool, and it was really fun to see it live, and it was their first show in New York, so there was a lot of the crew and friends from the show were there in the audience, so...
I bet there were a bunch of WNYC cats in the audience too.
Heck yeah.
Brian Lair was over there.
I don't know.
Leonard Lopate was hanging out.
I wouldn't know them on sight, but if they had spoken.
Sartorius Johnson, I bet, was over there.
But yeah, it was a really cool show. There was a great energy, and so that was what was new to me.
Nice.
Well, that must have been fun, dude.
It was
and
great.
Welcome back, Jules.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let's pop onto our theme this week.
What is our theme?
Our theme is parental influence. So things that you found through your parents' taste, or that your parents listened to, so that's why you listened to it, or that maybe you shared with your parents, like you both got into it together, kind of thing.
Basically something you wouldn't have discovered if it wasn't for your parents. Maybe.
Yeah, pretty likely.
Like incest, for example.
Right. No, but as long as you have siblings, you can discover that.
Yeah. You don't need
or
parents
cousins.
for that.
That's true.
There are plenty of orphans who still have incestuous relationships, and we don't condemn them for that.
That's true. Sorry, orphans.
Like Batman. Yes. So this week we have 2 picks that follow that theme of parental influence, and we'll get right into it.
Exit the garage and now starts the day. At least for the moment he pretends it's okay, but in the back of his mind he wants to get away. Viewing from a distance, everything appears fine, but inside the mind, but inside the mind, but inside the mind. Viewing from a distance, everything appears fine, but inside the mind, but inside the mind, but inside.
My pick this week is the Steve Miller album from 1977.
Steve Miller Band.
Steve Miller Band album, Book of Dreams from 1977. It was their 10th studio album and considered one of their most successful. It actually financially is their most successful studio album. A lot of the reviews of this album are like, this is great, whatever. You can find the three songs that matter, or most of these songs on their greatest hits. So that came out pretty much around the same time as this album. So how I discovered this and where it ties into the theme is that my parents, this was sort of their, we had this weird little end table thing that you would open with one of those, like those latch metal handles. And in there were all these vinyl records.
Was the thing a record player itself?
No. So we had a separate record player. So this was one of the, among a small collection of records, like I think Simon and Garfunkel, the standard Simon and Garfunkel record.
I'm sure they had Peter Frampton Comes Alive.
No.
What? Everybody has that album.
They didn't.
Everybody.
They had Tommy, and they had the disco score to Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty good. And then they had this album, Book of Dreams, and it was
so they
nice.
bought all their records in 1978 is what you're saying.
So. I mean, that's pretty much when.
And then you were born. They were like,
Yeah,
oh,
that's it. That's the end of records. Or maybe they made me
broke
listen
all the
to
records.
So this album was one that I would listen to, and I actually never owned it outside of the vinyl version.
Yeah, but you didn't even own that.
Right, that was my folks.
Yeah.
I'll own it when they're dead. It'll be the one cash grab I go
They
for.
still have it?
I don't know, but if they do,
To have it. It's right next to their Peter Frampton album.
No, they don't ever have that. It's one of those things where I had it, I took it and put it in a stack of things for me, and then probably my brothers now have it in a stack for them, and who knows where that stack ended up ever. So,
well, now your nephew has it on his turntables.
yeah, yeah.
Jungle.
And there's that album definitely is sample worthy.
Oh yeah, without
There's
a
some
doubt.
cool stuff in it. I mean, I don't think I actually listened to it with them, except for I'd put it on the record player while doing kitchen stuff or whatever, and just have it in the background.
So growing up, your parents didn't play it; you just played it.
Yeah, I mean, we would put usually we didn't put music on unless it was, maybe put a CD on the CD player kind of thing usually it was while doing something. It wasn't usually too, we turn on the radio a lot of the time. So putting on a record at a certain point just didn't happen. And then we had CDs and cassettes and other ways of listening to things. Usually that's what got played. The vinyl stuff all sort of faded. So it was more sort of enjoying it individually, but it was definitely something I didn't buy for myself, and I haven't purchased again.
So there was never a time when your mom or your dad had this record on and you were like, hey, I think I actually like this.
No, I think it was more like, oh, hey, the stash of their records, I'm going to pull it out and listen to this stuff. So
what made you drawn to that particular record?
Probably the giant airbrush Pegasus on it. By I don't know who the artists are, but
Pegasus,
I think it was
horse,
a pair
man,
of
that'll do it every time.
Pair of artists that did that cover. But I don't know, it was just one of those things where you're kind of going through the albums and listening to the stuff and just try it out. And it's
How old were you when you tried it out? And did you have your own record player, or was it
I had a record player. I was probably 11 or 12.
Oh, okay.
So, but I mean, if they bought this album when it came out, or even a couple of years after it came out in 1979 or something, that was still 10 years before I listened to it. So it, if anything, maybe it traveled with them or something. So it had definitely gone through a few moves by the time I had started listening to it.
And they decided we should hold on to this one.
Yeah, this is art.
Well, they thought they did until Holt snuck it out of there.
Stole it.
So never your dad was like, John, this is real music.
Well, that's the other thing too, is I didn't really come from a music family. We didn't listen to a ton of music all the time. It was just sort of like we'd have the radio on, or usually like programs like NPR
with
or
6
something.
kids too. I mean, it would have been hard to
Right. I mean, we probably listened to there's a Sesame Street cassette that we knew by heart, and it had some classics like George Washington Bridge by Ernie and Bert, which is a great song. Though
You call them Ernie and Bert? I always call them Bert and Ernie.
Ernie and Bert.
Ernie and Bert. Nobody calls them Ernie and Bert.
We do.
It's Bert and Ernie.
Ernie's the alpha. He's the top.
But so here you were, little young John Holt, pre-beard, and you're going through your parents' records, and you're like, ooh, this has a Pegasus on it. I want to try this out on my new fangled.
Yeah, and I know I started
turntable.
on the B side, and that I think it starts with Jungle Love on the B side.
Yeah.
And it's just the whole
bringing the heat right out of the box.
Yeah, the
in
whole
side B.
experience is built. The album's really well. It's one of those albums that works as a whole really well. Some of the tracks are pretty much just interstitial, like sort of movements from one song to another. And it's just solid. It's experimental in that they're playing with some of the like electronic technology with this sort of guitar rock stuff. And it's not fantastic. It's not like Led Zeppelin fantasy rock kind of stuff.
It's not Queen,
Right.
Like with
It's
this.
not- it's
bring
not
out your
ELO.
scimitars.
It's more like
yellow.
no,
it's more like Leonard Skinner, but
there
not
are
even
some
as country. It's
fantastical
really-
imagery in some of the songs. Even the titles seem,
Yeah,
Even
I mean-
the thing is called Book of Dreams, so it's got to have some kind of surrealness
Yeah.
to it.
I mean, I guess it seemed like the imagery is pretty evocative, but the subject matter might be more like mundane, not in a bad way mundane, but more, there's no like epic sort of.
I don't know. I mean,
Songs in it.
any
It's pretty-
song,
a lot
even
of
about the most intimate thing, could be epic in its own way.
Yeah.
Even if it's about a single teardrop. Holt.
Yeah,
A lot
with
of
a
them are-
world in it.
There's a bunch of songs that are very like pop, but like just the lyrics are very,
Yeah,
they're just there to rock out.
yeah. It's not
Dance
It's
or-
not like super. I don't. This album plays with a few different influences. You can hear them. There's ones that are like calling back to like more of a '60s sort of ballad, and or like even a '50s ballad. There's in there. There's just a few different things they're playing with. There's ones that are a little bit more country, but never nearly as far as like Leonard Skinner or any of those classic rock guys went.
When it's kind of like there's all these different influences, but then they're all like pushed through this like late '70s production style that kind of smooths it out and puts it together.
Right.
Well, this is one of the things I definitely want to discuss more next week with my pick, which also happens to come from the 70s. But what a wild decade for movies and music.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a I find it now looking back, and of course, I have the fortune to not have to have lived through all the crappy stuff to get to now I can see the cream has risen already. I'm not in it, so I'm not like inundated with 1,000 bad disco songs. I just know the good disco songs,
Right.
and therefore I'm fascinated with the music from the 70s. There's it's such a time of flux all through the decades. So you start off with the post hippie stuff, post psychedelia, getting right into the like Creedence Clearwater Revival, Leonard Skinner stuff like early in the 70s. Kind of getting away from the psychedelia, but holding on to a lot of those really complex production value and really complex production methods, and then it just goes, and there's so many different ways that it goes. You got Devo coming out, you've got all the punk rock new wave guys, you've got hip hop coming out, in the early, like around 77, 78 in Queens, and this is all happening at the same time, and you got a band like Steve Miller Band, who are, they're big, they're a big star band, but they're still taking chances and they're still making, they're still pushing it, I think.
Right. Well, I mean, I wonder too if this, like, they're probably kind of like the Dead or that type of band where I'd imagine they have a lot of live albums, like on top of these studio albums. So there must be aspects of this where, you know, you go to see them as a sort of a jam band and a sort of concert rock band.
Oh, did they have a lot of jammy stuff live?
I think so. Well, they yeah, I think so. More so than this, and they came from an era and a genre that definitely relied on that. In, you know, that was part of the style. And then you have this sort of these albums that try to tighten those into, you know, 12 tracks or whatever, with like little pieces, like a minute of experimentation that might have been a 10-minute interlude in an actual on-stage concert, you know? So it's that sort of like,
I'll just skip the live
packaging
records
that
then
stuff.
if that's...
Well, I don't know. I haven't listened to much of their live stuff. Like, again, this is kind of as far as I've gone down the Steve, and you know, that and the Joker song.
Yeah, I mean, they're classic rock hit makers. You can't deny that they got the chops when it comes to that.
And on this album, there are 3 standouts. There's Jungle Love is a big one. Just like great imagery, sort of weird opening, and really their drums are really clean and kind of driving. I don't know. One of the things I really like is that the melodies are so interesting on this record. And that's another thing about that I find so interesting about the 70s. A lot of the songs that stick out to me that I love from especially the late 70s, Blondie's coming out, and Townes Van Zant's going strong, Elvis Costello, all these guys, and they have just such really, really interesting melodies that are just timeless. And a lot of these songs, they seem so standard rock to us because we've heard them on classic rock all of our lives. But man, the melodies are very interesting. They're not. A lot of these standard. Are defining too. I mean, Jet Airliner and Swingtown are the other 2 like tracks off of this that are the big ones. But that's the tough thing too. Like you're saying, when you look back over the stuff, so much is going on in these that it starts to blur as to who was influencing who and where the stuff came from, really.
Yeah.
So it's a little difficult.
Well, that's why I always end up in this era, because it becomes such a melting pot. But so much of the stuff that we are used to today, you know, had its start there. You know, so much of the stuff we listen to now is just the Talking Heads, you know, from that era. And where did they come from? You know, same with I've just recently found some of the roots of some Elvis Costello stuff, because listening to him, I'm like, wow, where does this sound come from? But you know, you can go down that rabbit hole and find a lot of people actually.
Graham Parker stole it from and killed.
Well,
get it?
Nick Lowe was one of his producers, and if you listen to some Nick Lowe stuff, you're like, oh, never mind. That's where Elvis Costello got a lot of his sound, because he's being influenced by the guys producing him. He can't help it.
Right. And I mean, some of that too has to be influence, but also parallel development, where you have 2 people developing a sound together, and one guy has his take on it and another has his take on it, and there's no way the 2 aren't going to mix.
Kind of like the Brock Picasso. Yep, the Brock and Picasso connection.
Like Klimt
in art
that we talked about before, and Sheila have cross influence. So,
it's kind of a competition, but at the same time they're learning from each other. And at the same time they're sharing ideas.
It's collaboration / So had you heard this stuff before, Jules?
I had heard probably a couple of the bigger hits off the record, but to me, I had never been like, oh, that's the Steve Miller Band. I think the Joker is their only song that, you know, I associated with them, and I think, you know, I definitely love that song. I think it's a great song. To me, the rest of this record isn't to that level for me. I'm just not as into the style of music that this record is, even though, you know, it has some of the same influences and stuff. But I think to me, like the sound of this record is very like classic rock, 70s rock. I don't know why. Like it just, to me, there's a bunch of bands who put out albums around that time, and it all kinds of blends together a little bit for me. and I'm not crazy about the sound,
Right.
but I actually like in the kind of synthesizer explorations and discovery in this album. You could tell there was this new toy, and they were like, oh man, like check out all this cool stuff you can do. And
You know how you have all those songs? Let's put them all together with this mood or
and
art.
I love the kind of like they're like about half the songs have these long openers that build from like these weird synthesizer sounds into like the more traditional rock song.
Right.
And I kind of dig that. I think also a lot of the electronic music guys that I listen to now like are heavily influenced by like 70s, early 80s sounds and their samples. And even when they're not sampling and creating their own sounds, it's also heavily influenced by that time period. I mean, like Daft Punk and a lot of other people like that. Like, so you hear a lot of those sounds in there, and I don't know why. I just love I love that stuff. And there's even like whole instrumental tracks on here that are just these trippy like keyboard explorations,
Meditations, if you will.
Yeah, and also like there's the what is it calling again? The alone track, the alone space, or
my own space.
My own space. Yeah, I think that's a totally like. To me, that's definitely a drug song, and I think some of those other tracks. I think there's definitely a little leftover psychedelia going on in this record.
Yeah, well,
for sure.
It didn't end for everybody, and with
There
Woodstock.
was still a lot of cocaine and stuff going on, I guess. But it's I mean I still
allegedly.
allegedly. But it was it's a fun record, and for sure, and it's like I'm not gonna turn it off. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not gonna seek it out either, but I definitely enjoyed the excuse to listen to it.
Mary, what about you? Did you get a chance?
I have a similar experience as Jules. I don't. I've certainly heard the bigger hits, but I wouldn't identify them as the Steve Miller Band.
I think maybe because the name is so generic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Alan Parsons project. Like I couldn't tell you what song is an Alan Parsons project song offhand easily. Like what's a hit? But,
Yeah, and also like Jules, I think, just kind of this flavor of the classic rock album is maybe not my thing. But I mean, I like the real catchy tunes on here. But overall, it's not something you're gonna catch me listening to like by myself. If somebody has it on, I'm not gonna be opposed at all. But
I feel like they're, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they're like a nostalgia band and not an iconic band. I mean that's sort of how I would separate.
I would have thought that before listening to this whole record. Mm-hmm. I mean, you see that they are. Well, when you say nostalgic, you mean people are nostalgic for them,
right? And they're they're associated with a time and a place, and they somehow were not able to. I mean, I think the reason I'm like, if you said like Steve Miller Band, I would have been like, Fly
Like an Eagle.
I think they're the guys who, like, it would have taken me a while. Like when I like did a little digging, I was like, oh, they're the guys that did the Joker. Okay, yeah, those guys. You know what I mean? Like, and there's other.
Well, the one song that always pops out to me whenever I think of the Steve Miller Band is "Fly Like an Eagle," which I think is a little generic for me. It's just kind of like "Fly Like an Eagle," whatever. But listen to this record, I was like, wow, these guys are way cooler than I thought.
Well, and what is interesting is how, because I mean, Fly Like an Eagle, The Joker, and this album, they're very different.
Yeah,
all three of those things, like so. And I mean, you were saying this is their 10th record, so they probably went through quite an evolution, especially because it was such a time of change.
Right.
And I think almost all the bands who were big in that period went through a big
Had
evolution.
to, yeah. If you listen to all the Stones records, forget it.
Yeah.
And also the post Beatles stuff. These guys are all over the place.
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of like timeline them a little bit. So they really got going in probably about 10 years before this came out in 67 or so, 68 is when they started playing more. So this is 10 years into their career.
But that's when they started playing as the Steve Miller Band. They were even kind of a band before that, right? In Chicago.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like
I think Steve Miller was in some other band before that with a bunch of those
He was in the
dudes.
Goldberg Miller Blues Band.
Yeah.
They were on Hullabaloo with the Four Tops and the Supremes.
Yeah, well, the Goldberg Miller Band, that's never going anywhere with a name like that.
But yeah, it's I don't know. It's definitely I can see where it's sort of like it can fall into the middle of being like this is just straight iconic. This if someone was to say pick a song that defines this type of rock without being a standout too much, you could easily fall into like
well,
picking
I feel
a Miller
like
track.
People who weren't familiar with the Ramones could think that about the Ramones, that they developed this sound and so they're just an iconic punk rock band. But when you listen to their records, I mean,
but they're not an iconic punk rock band. They're pretty like unique.
The Ramones?
Yeah,
but they're the grandfathers of American punk without a doubt.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's X and X was another big that's like an
it
LA.
all starts with the Ramones for me.
But it's different. Like New York punk. I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's.
I feel like. Yeah, I mean.
Well, I'm just saying. Well, my point is that, unless you really, take the time to dive into them, then it might sound like, oh, Steve Miller Band, just another '70s super band or whatever. But when you listen to it and really appreciate, there's great instrumentation, wonderful bass lines in it.
I think
so catchy.
I mean, I think when you're saying that about a band, you're not writing them off as they're no talent.
No,
forgettable. Yeah. It's just that somehow they just kind of stayed in that. They didn't move. I don't know.
I think it's easy for us because we weren't there to know because if you think about this band, so when did the Joker come out?
73.
73. When did Fly Like an Eagle come out? Like 74, 75.
Yeah,
and then this came out in 78. If you have a band these days that is able to produce that size of hit on over that time span, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not Lady Gaga. You know what I mean?
Right.
She's got two records that have done that so far. Maybe she'll do more. Who knows? But it's something we take for granted because to us it's all the past. But that's a big time span to be continuing to make these great hits that stand the test of time.
Well, and I mean that's probably true.
And I'm not saying you're putting them down either.
No, and I mean the thing is, it's probably true. There's only for whatever reason, there's always just a handful of bands or people who somehow become icons.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what the word is, but maybe icons. Like
they kind of break a certain level and
they
become superstars.
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
like a supermodel, but for music.
I think in a way it's almost like maybe they're the bands that everyone in the next generation is like, oh, these are the guys
represent,
because they're the ones that kind of carry their torch and keep talking
it's different,
about
like
them.
It's different between being representing the genre or being representative of the genre. Like there's sort of a different hey, this the Beatles is this versus the Beatles were one of those bands who did this.
Yeah.
So that's sort of it's like two different tacks where one is a little bit could be like one hit wonders these guys aren't one hit wonders.
They could have been though.
Yeah, if they had stopped at any point. Yeah.
But I don't know. It's very interesting. And I'm starting to wonder if from the last 2 decades or maybe the last decade, if that's going to stop happening, if there's going to be bands that are able to stand out, because the super artists is happening less and less. Like music, like everything else, is getting a lot more niche. You know what I mean?
No, but there are bands that and that's the thing. So when Steve Miller was coming out, he was up against the super bands, the John Denver, Neil Diamond, ABBA, Bee Gees, Pete Frampton. These were at the time Madonna. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's only after time that and the dust settles. So we could never tell right now. But I'll tell you, Radiohead is this. Yeah. I'll tell you. I mean, maybe even more so. But
and And Nirvana, for whatever they've become like an icon.
And Wilco, I think time will prove that they are.
I think what's
going
to be like a difficult thing is like Steve Miller Band. They're for the same time period. There are more within their genre. There are probably higher like people who like they basically are people with a larger draw and a larger audience share.
Queen.
People will check the box next to them first on the list when they're defining this genre, just like they'll check the box next to Nirvana or over Pearl Jam or one of those kind of bands.
Watch it.
Now I know, but that's where it's going to land. So let's get into last thoughts. Keith, last thoughts on Steve
My
Miller
last
Band's
thought
Book
to
of
you,
Dreams.
John Holt, is thank you for bringing this to my attention.
You're
because just like you, my dad just like your parents, my dad had tons of Steve Miller Band records. In fact, a lot of live ones. But unlike you, my parents always listened to music. Always. And it was kind of this thing where we're like, can we play Madonna? And they're like, no, we're playing our records, kids. You just got to deal with it. Go play somewhere or something. So we were exposed to, luckily, in hindsight proves this, to some really good music. And but Steve Miller, for me, I just never. I think it's the name of the band. I swear, it's just such a like middle of the road.
It's like Bob Dingle's band.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Smithington record. It's just like.
I think that's gonna hurt Dave Matthews.
Maybe, I don't know. But listening to this record, it was really a pleasure, and I love to be proven wrong, and I love to kind of hear a record and go, wow, holy mackerel, how did I miss this? So, and that's how I felt with this record. So thank you. And right away, two of the songs I was like, I bought them. I was listening to them on some streaming service, and I was like, nope, got to go buy those. And they're going to be on my next mix, guaranteed.
So, Jules, last thoughts on Book of Dreams?
Well, I'm really glad I finally have a sweet design for my van.
Nice.
The Pegasus. Neon Pegasus.
Yeah, chrome. Get some chrome on in there while you're at it.
So, Mary, last thoughts on Steve Miller Band's Book of Dreams?
Now when I hear those songs, I'll know that's Steve Miller Band.
Yeah. All right. So, everybody, you should check it out. It's available probably on some streaming sites. It's not as an album available on radio, but again, most of the big songs.
I think we all agree it's pronounced RDO, isn't it?
Yes.
Radio.
RDO.
No, I think it's
as in
RDO.
radio.
Yeah, like radio. RDO.
Oh, it's the Miller Band
I don't know. I've heard it different.
on radio. All right. So anyhow,
Well, I know that GIF is pronounced GIF, not GIF. So
yeah.
But I
for
still say
contractual
Me too.
reasons. So to get into his Book of Dreams, 1977, you can buy the vinyl. That's the only way to listen to it
Or you
that I
can-
know of.
or you can come over to my house. I'll play it for you.
I've heard you can hear it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's viable to
Yeah,
find
well,
it
it's
on the
legal
internet.
on YouTube. It's the legally
Sure.
done version. Sure.
No.
No, if it was illegal, they would have
not.
taken it down. It's
All
totally
right.
legal.
So thanks everybody for listening to my pick.
My pick this week is the artist Matthew Barney, and my father introduced me to him. My father is also an artist and an art professor, and so art's always been a big part of his life, and so it's always been around. He always had art magazines at the house, a lot of artist friends. He was, he would have shows. I would go with him, help him set up, even when I just came to visit him during the summers, all that kind of stuff. So I almost could not pick anything else. The reason I picked Matthew Barney is he's a more current artist. I would say he's kind of newer on the scene, and he's also, I think, pretty unique. He also kind of overlaps with my interests, which is maybe why I found him interesting. And it's also from more recent history. It was right around the time I was shortly after college, and I just moved to New York, and he was having a big show at the Guggenheim, which was a big deal because he took over the entire museum to put on a performance, and we happened to also be like working at the Guggenheim, and my father came to town just to see the show, and I had already
and parts of that particular movie were filmed in the Guggenheim that they were airing there too.
Yeah. So I'm going to focus on one of his works, which is this 5-part. So he's mostly a sculptor and video artist. I think of him mostly as almost like a film artist rather than traditional video artist. I'll talk about that a little bit more. And so he filmed, and so he has this 5-part or 6-part, 5-part Cremaster Cycle. It's called. And so it's 5 different video art pieces that are all pretty long and elaborate. And he's kind of the first to create what I would say kind of big budget art videos where he actually used a lot of traditional Hollywood film techniques. He had
and nice looking cinematography and lighting and such.
Yeah, and I mean they're big budget, quote unquote, for an art film, but they're still very low budget by Hollywood standards. They're definitely made on a skeleton crew of dedicated people, but because I'm really into film and animation, I found that interesting. I also think his iconography is really interesting. He just mixes a lot of weird stuff. He kind of talks about it as being really attracted and kind of repulsed by things, but also attracted mostly by the things he uses. So there's he uses Vaseline is one of his favorite materials that he uses a lot, and
he actually sculpts with it, which is amazing to see.
Frozen Vaseline, yeah.
So what? As long as you keep Vaseline frozen, you can sculpt it, and that's what he has. These massive, really huge sculptures all out of Vaseline, which.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I mean, how do you even begin to start to set that up in a museum?
Right.
Just keep it frozen.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's and so I mean, definitely his stuff is weird, and I like weird stuff, so that also appeals to me. It's not just although I also appreciate really beautiful landscapes. Don't get me wrong, I'm not bad mouthing that, but I definitely like he's a little more crazy and punk rock, I guess, in a way, because he just goes for it. I mean, he's also just works incredibly hard, and at a young age was able to get really big in the art scene. And some people think he's great, some people think he's terrible, but everybody's got an opinion. And
you can't deny how much stuff this dude builds and makes, and it's unbelievable.
And just being able to have the force of will to get the money and all these people to collaborate with him.
And to keep building upon it, to make each next one better.
Yeah. Yeah, and he definitely, and so he filmed the Cremaster Cycle out of sequence. There's 5 total, but I think the 3rd one was filmed last, and I think has the biggest budget and the best production values. And I think he got better as a filmmaker, and I watched an interview where he was talking about it, and he talked about how in the beginning, I think it sort of ended up organically becoming video, because at first he wanted to do these site-specific pieces, and it was thinking more sculptural, but then it's well, do you just make it this really small thing that just a few people are going to see? So then he was got into the video thing, and then he just got really serious.
Well, that's the thing with almost any kind of performance artist or site-specific artist. There's always a photography element that has to come into play,
right? Because you have to record it.
I think I love that he just kind of embraced that and said, well, why stop there? You
Yeah.
know, why
Right.
stop
This is
at
almost,
the site?
and it becomes even more mixed media where he'll, so here's the website. There is a Cremaster website.
Which
Yeah.
is flash only. You can't view it on an
Yeah,
iPad.
it's
Right.
a little it's showing its age.
But it's sort of like
Flash ain't old, y'all.
It's designed, and it's sort of like it's a little bit weird to navigate, and it's built to showcase this thing. It's curating.
Yeah.
In the same way that it sort of levels. So it curates the sculptures, which curate the performance, which curates the video, or vice. You know what I mean? It's all these elements that sort of hone down to the basic like sculpt, like everything sort of showing itself off, like the photo showing off the sculptures, the video showing off the sculptures, the performance showing off the sculptures, like the interaction between
One
those.
of the cool things that he does too is he just picks these just wild locations. I remember the first thing I saw of his was before the Cremaster 3 thing came out. It was something filmed in the like salt flats, I believe.
Right, where it's
right.
wet.
Yeah, it's just beautiful.
It looks like
And-
they're on mirrors the entire time.
Yeah, aren't they? Isn't there like also it's like a rodeo or something?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like a
there's
rodeo on a
cowboys
salt
and-
flat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
there's a lot of Americana kind of iconography. There's a lot of
Well, he's a Midwesterner, right?
yeah, he's a Midwesterner. He played football in high school. And
He
all
went
that
to
stuff.
think in
Yale on a
college,
football
right? Yeah.
scholarship.
Yeah. That's the other thing that's unique about him is that he's like he's not your stereotypical artist. He's
very physical.
yeah, and the ladies say he's handsome, and
I'll go ahead and say it. The guy's handsome.
and so he's the total package. And he caught the eye of a certain Bjork.
Yep.
And they were an item. I don't know if they still are. I don't really keep
I think
tabs
they are.
on that.
They had a kid together.
They live, according to Wikipedia, I don't know if it's current, but they live together in Brooklyn Heights.
Whoa.
No kidding.
No kidding.
And they have a
We
kid.
could run across them anytime.
No kidding.
And they also he made another art film that she was in. I think that was shot and takes place on an aircraft carrier. I didn't get a chance to see it, but it did play in theaters. So again, the fact that he's sort of, I think film and TV screens are kind of the media of our generation. And I think that may be part of his popularity and the fact that he's been able to bridge out a little bit more is because of that. But I think
he embodies multimedia.
Yeah.
So everybody throws the term around, and when was it? He started like 96 or something. Was the
94 was when Cremaster started.
let's see, way back then, and he's already thinking of integrating sculpture with the video elements, with the music, with the interesting settings, and then not just when it comes time to show the final product, just show up in a movie theater. He builds a whole art show with all the sculpture, with it. I don't think anyone's done it nearly as well yet.
No. And I mean, I think it's also like, to some extent, I think he's somewhat savvy at the same time, because it's like, if you just have the video art, I mean, you can sell limited editions of the discs or whatever, but it's a lot better to also have like a physical thing that people can buy, which is like a print or a sculpture,
and to see it in the museum.
Right, exactly. For the museum, to just have the film, you could kind of miss it. But when the whole exhibit is his artwork, and then there's also the film in the cinema to the side. It's
That's also the kind of prize in the cereal box is when you come to see this thing, you're just seeing all these beautiful, interesting sculptures that he then integrates into film. But then when you see the actual box when I saw them, they were all on Laserdisc. I don't know now.
Yeah.
But he had these really ornate, handmade boxes that were just beautiful,
and
they
each
looked.
box was themed to that cycle or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, we were working at the Guggenheim when we saw this. I think we were actually teaching like a class of students in their workshop area
Filmmaking.
how to do like filmmaking, and it was tied to the Barney
That's right.
exhibit. Like they try to tie in their workshops with the showcase. So that was sort of our ins, and that's the reason why I was exposed to it at all, was because we were doing something related to it. And then So you're Jules.
I think we probably would have been exposed to it anyway because Julian's dad came to see it.
But I think that's sort of like
my dad
it just
bought the
happened
book
to
and
the
everything.
two. It just happened to happen.
Yeah.
At the same time, those two things.
But I had also like already been exposed to his work because my dad always had subscribed to art magazines. Like I think it was in an issue of Art in America. Like after the first Cremaster came out, and the
Cremaster 4 in '94.
Something like that, yeah. And the imagery was powerful enough and like unique
especially
enough.
in still footage.
Yeah,
video.
that when I saw it, like it stuck in my mind. And when I saw his work again at the Guggenheim, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen this guy. I've seen this stuff before. So, but I know we've been going on and on. I think being fairly positive about it. But you can see his parts, at least of his films, or all of them, on YouTube, and see clips on his website and see images, and. You know, for everything that's great about them, they're still art films, and they are, you know, they're not edited. I mean, and we're very used to watching like things that are designed to hold our attention.
Constructed in a way, yeah.
And this is very like
meandering.
Yeah, meandering, slow paced. It's full of symbology. You're not really sure.
Symbology, nice.
Why are they out of
what-
sequence?
They were filmed out of
Because it's
sequence.
art, man.
I think.
That's the
I think-
impression I get, but there must be a better
think-
reason than that.
I think it's because he had these specific locations in mind and these specific ideas, and it was probably, you know, whichever he was able to do first. You know, like, oh well, I can.
But then why didn't he just name it?
I think because in his mind they go in this particular order.
And the order is based on, because the Cremaster is this muscle that controls. It's based on external stimuli, controls the rate, the amount of descent of the testicles of a male.
So if it's really cold, tuck him in.
Sucks in, or like pain sucks in.
Wait, is that a real thing?
It's
or
real.
is that-
So he's, because again,
It's
Matthew,
the Cremaster muscle,
so he
and
was
that's what he named this.
he was
okay.
a pre-med student, like going to be a plastic surgeon in Yale while playing football or whatever, and then kind of came out of it in '89 like, I'm going to be an artist. And this cycle is it's biology and paired with some other things he's interested in, like gender roles and violence in biology, and themes of violence, themes of just presentation of
Mythology.
sports. Yeah, mythology.
Sports is a big part of it.
But sports as also symbolizing violence, and also
War.
symbolizing biology, and like historical movements, and are the movement of humans.
But basically what Jules is trying to say is some of it's not so easy to watch.
Right.
It can be kind of boring.
He's doing a lot of, like, he talks about this too. He does a lot of reference to, like, you know, he's saying, I like film. He's not making a film. He's
Right.
making a piece that discusses film. That's the other thing. So he's not
Kind
making.
of, yeah.
So
Because
it's kind of like a tribute to the greatest song of all time.
sort of, it's. I guess he kind of sees it as like, if film was a block of granite, this is what he's sculpting to reference. Like, you look at this face of the thing, and this is supposed to be like a zombie film. You look at this face, and it's supposed to be, a fight scene, fantasy scene, or whatever. It's really.
But again, even though it's art, it's video art, it's still trying. It's still like 10 million times better than any video art I've seen. Like, just, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of video artists don't give the medium they're working in any respect. They're just like, oh, well, I got a camera, I know how to turn it on, and I'm gonna do some stuff on it. You know what I mean? Like, and he really like went all out and really like made an effort.
Yeah.
Well,
totally.
that's leads into what I want to say about it too, which is along the lines of what you're saying, in that I love and hate the Cremaster stuff, because I really appreciate the sculpture, the tactile. There's a tactile quality to the stuff that when you see it on screen, you want to touch it, and then when you see it there in the museum, you still want to touch it. But you're not allowed to. I mean, I would love to try to touch one of those Vaseline things, because I just want to know what the heck that feels like.
Let me put the tip of my penis on it.
If only there was a way to freeze Vaseline at home. Anyway, but part of me always feels like, well, it's kind of a little of a cop-out because you can just make any kind of weirdo stuff and put it on screen and be like, it's art. You know what I mean? Part of me wants to...
But that's true of all art. You know what I mean?
know, but...
And that's kind of... Yeah, I mean, I have the same...
I just love storytelling so much. And he says there's all these layers and layers of iconography and meaning.
Yeah.
But, it's just really easy to go like, it's a bean. It means life and whatever. It's just like, well, show me. Make it a story or make it something that... And that's not me being lazy. That's just me demanding something more approachable.
Right. And I mean, again, that's... I've always had that issue with the art world and art in general. It's, and that's why I've always been more drawn to, pop art, or I guess it's not art, but, to...
Sure it is.
I don't know, what do you call it?
Media. Not pop art.
Media,
media is one. Yeah, media or
but see, that's the thing, like,
professional art.
Yeah,
but in the future, when people are looking back, it will be appreciated along the same way. All the Simpsons will be appreciated on a level that Japanese woodblock prints are appreciated. Now
because
it's
popular
because it is
culture, right?
It's art, and it's just not recognized by the salon or whatever. But it took craftsmen. It takes artists and craftsmanship to make it, and that is what will, in the future, be more recognized as art, I believe, than most of this stuff that is considered art in the art world.
So, I mean, you can also think of song, like maybe poetry or songs that have abstract lyrics that don't really quite have, you just get an impression from them, but you don't really know what the meaning is. But I think because music just can tap right into groove and emotion in a different way, it can sort of it doesn't need a narrative.
Well,
to be
there are a lot
effective.
more tools in music. It'll touch you just on the
Right.
melody, the sound, on
so-
all these elements, and then the lyric.
Yeah, but so I would say that modern art and abstract art can sort of tap into that in a visual sense, but I think it's harder to make a lasting impression in
Well,
that art.
I guess I always looked at those forms of art as more exploratory.
Yeah.
Where it's almost like they're the ones who are forging a path through a level of exploration of saying well, let's play with color and play with movement and play
No, I
with
hear you. It's kind of like high fashion. You know, the guys that make the really
the
out there
crazy
fashion
stuff,
things.
right? The avant-garde,
And
then
that stuff ends up influencing
the
music.
people who actually make the wearables or make the the Thomas Kincaids of the world who can paint light because Hopper really explored how to paint light. I mean, you could argue that there are more accessible fine artists or whatever like Hopper, but they're still playing and experimenting and breaking things down in a way that is not always consumable. And but I guess what you kind of get into a question with the Barney stuff is he just referencing when is it pop art is referencing taking clippings from magazines and mashing it together and making a new piece of art out of it, it becomes that Ouroboros kind of eating its tail thing, where if he's referencing films that are referencing other kinds of art,
Yeah, I really feel like film is not his primary influence and driver. I feel like it's almost
but he certainly has set up some just beautiful scenes over most of the... I think I've seen every Cremaster thing, but I haven't seen anything else that he's done other than the sculptures and things that go along with the
he did
Cremaster.
another series called Drawing Restraint.
Wait, so you saw every one?
Yeah, during this show at the Guggenheim, they had screenings of all of them.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. I saw them, or I just saw one of them, whichever one came out when I was in college. I guess maybe two of them came out, I think, but I was in class, in a painting class or something, and they took us down and had a big screening. And but it was the kind of thing where I wish that they had talked about it with us afterwards or something, because you're just dragging all these kids who... We always had a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And you're dragging us out of class. We have to get this painting done or whatever. And then we sit there for 45 minutes or however long.
What was some of the stuff going on in that one? Was it the one with the blue football field?
I don't remember.
And there was like a blimp?
I don't think so.
It might have been Cremaster 3, because I think that would have been... I guess that would have been...
3 was 2002.
It would have been...
2 was 99.
It might have been that one.
5 was 97.
It
1 was
would have been
95.
97 or 99.
Yeah, so it's 5 or 2, probably.
Yeah. But, and it was just the kind of thing where, the professors, like, it's not that they don't want to talk about it, but they're just kind of like, oh, what did you think about it?
Right,
they
don't want to put ideas in your head. They want you to interpret it, and they want you to draw things out of it.
Right. So, of course, we're all just a bunch of 19-year-old kids, and we're just at a university. We're not at a highfalutin art school and stuff, and so we're just like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I think, a lot of that stuff, too, it's kind of a Rorschach test, where, everybody's going to see something in it. But I guess it's more obvious than that in a way, but...
Well, some scenes are and some scenes aren't.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, I mean, it's in the end, it's like, I mean, I guess we're more talking more broadly about, like, what is art? What is the role of art? As, I guess I'm saying more as defined by the art scene. You know? And, I mean, I've always been kind of, I think it's very, I mean, for the artist and for someone like Matthew Barney, it's very, I don't know, it's somehow ego-driven and...
Well, I mean, you could, all art in a way is got to start at the ego,
but the fact that you're not very concerned with your audience understanding, and the only thing that matters is that you understand it, and it's okay, like, the audience can interpret it however they want. I don't know. To me, that's
even Bob Dylan back in the day. That was the thing he was saying all the time.
Compare this to another like art movement, like surrealist film. You have like Un Chien Andalou or whatever, where they're creating stuff that is not supposed to make sense, and is supposed to just. I mean, it's based just visceral. It's more about images and ideas on film.
Yeah, and for some reason. That short in particular, actually, first of all, I feel like it's much more digestible. It's short, and it's high impact. Like it's quick cutting. It's and the images are very striking.
Well, I mean, it's again, I guess the counter argument there is the comparison between the two is that is a film made in a surrealist film in that it's a self-contained movie, whereas Cremaster is more of a breakdown in using film to showcase a piece of art,
these ideas,
an idea. So it's like this is the idea is the film, or the presentation is the film versus the presentation is done with film.
Oh, man, you're confusing me.
I don't know.
I don't know what's going on.
What you were sort of saying, what makes sense to me, that he's just using film as the means to presentation, and it's not like the thing in itself.
Right.
He's not making a film. He's using film to.
He's not making a film. He's filming.
Maybe.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's basically.
But there's still editing. There's still music.
There's a dialogue still. Like there's still a back and forth with it, but it's not the end product is a combination of the things. Versus Un Chien Andalou, the end product is the film. Like,
well, this is basically what this all boils down to. Mary, was it better than Willow?
No.
Oh.
Nope.
Because Willow's like a solid B. All right. It's definitely not a B.
So,
but some cool looking stuff in it.
Yeah, there's some good stuff.
No. I would say, if you're interested in sculpture and multimedia, definitely see this. But if you want to see an awesome movie, I don't know. Don't see it.
If you want to see something weird, if you're tripping, maybe check it out.
If you want to see ladies walking around in goat's feet, check this out. If you want to see giants hanging out on the steps in Iceland, this is the place.
If you're into art, there's also a lot of artists featured in the film.
Yep.
A lot of his idols he put in the film, stuff like that. Anyway, so that was Matthew Barney.
Isn't there a lady who's got prosthetic see-through legs at one point?
Sculpted for this.
Yeah.
So last thoughts. We'll go round table here. Mary, last thoughts on Matthew Barney.
I don't know. I gave mine.
She was like, I saw it in college, and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, would you?
She's like, man, I got to go paint.
It's not better than Willow.
Okay.
My last thought.
Jules, last thoughts. Well, you mean it's you brought to the table. So Keith, last thoughts on it.
My last thoughts are it's beautiful. It's interesting to see. The films by themselves aren't nearly as interesting as seeing some of his sculptures by themselves.
Yeah, what Keith said.
I would say that he's kind of built.
Yes, exactly.
He's limited access to it, so you can see it online or whatever, but except for maybe a short version of the third film, there's no real, unless you go to a screening, you're not going to see it. If you get a chance to see a screening of a Cremaster, you should see it, because they're not going to release them.
Or if you have a lot of money, you might be able to buy a copy from someone else who's already bought a copy.
I mean, that's like buying art at that
But
point.
I think, doesn't the MoMA have a permanent one of his sculptures in their
they have a
permanent collection?
sculpture.
Yeah.
Well,
That's something. That's
they
a
might
place to
have a
start.
copy of the film as well, maybe in their collection.
Definitely in there.
Well, they'll have
the Guggenheim
screenings,
has
but-
them in their permanent collection, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering
Wait,
how
why
often
can't we
they
watch
screen.
them on YouTube? We're not supposed to?
You can.
you
I'm
can.
saying if
It's
you want
not
to
them
see
in their
if you want to
entirety.
see him presented in toto or whatever, and as they were meant to be,
And Cremaster 3 is definitely the most
that's the big one.
lovingly created,
Right.
and as far as the film is concerned.
But if you get a chance to see, I'd say it's worth trying any of the five if you can
just
get into a
skip
screening.
around.
or
see
I'd
a
just
few
rent
scenes.
Willow.
Yeah, and rub Vaseline all over yourself.
Frozen Vaseline.
Do you think people cosplay at the screenings? Like cosplay like the...
Callbacks.
I don't think he's quite. I
Characters.
don't think he's quite that big.
Cremaster
I don't
horror
know.
show.
I don't think he's broken out quite that much.
So, what is your dad? Did your dad like?
Yeah, no, my dad's into him, like, definitely
He's a true
respected
believer.
it. And
Well, your dad specifically for the longest time lived in the world of sculpture, so
yeah,
That's
and
gotta
I mean,
be-
he's also like never been kind of multimedia, like, and has gotten recently, even in his 70s, into more performance and video art and installation. So he's trying to, because he's always had varied interests. He did photography, he did sculpture, he he also put on this crazy thing called sculpture racing in the 80s, which was totally my favorite. When I was a kid, it was awesome, where he basically got a bunch of artists together to build sculptures on wheels, and then they got together and, like a big town race, they got a crowd and everything, and they raced these sculptures. And it was, for me, I just got such a kick out of it, and they were great sculptures.
what a funny idea too. It's so great.
Yeah, and it was definitely tongue in cheek and kind of poking fun at the artwork, but it was also kind of populist as an art thing.
Yeah,
and
sure.
because it was a race, and
Yeah.
people loved it, and so they were able to do it at a bunch of different cities because the cities were like, yeah, this is awesome.
Well, I mean, in a way, it's just kind of a jab at the art world in general, and saying that people like art, y'all. We just got to present it
Yeah,
in
we
a
just
way
got to
that
take it out there.
Yeah.
and also
And it's kind
just-
of opens you up to the idiot rods or whatever that they do in New York now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Idiot Rod. Yeah, it had that vibe a little bit, except it wasn't so chaotic or.
It was more. Well, it's like artists,
And I'm sure
versus-
the sculptures were actually
mobs.
quite beautiful too.
But it was funny because the first time I saw him race, it was in Milwaukee, which is where my grandparents also lived, and I was heartbroken that my dad didn't win the race. When it was totally not the point. But so it was. Yeah, no, it was. I have great memories of that. So I don't know where I went with that, but
So, Matthew Barney,
yeah, Matthew Barney,
Mr. Bjork.
Yeah, Mr. Bjork. Take a look, see what you
Yeah,
think.
check it out.
Yeah.
Don't take our word for it.
This body of work began with by selecting 5 locations that would eventually come together as one body. Once those locations were established, I went to those places and started writing stories that would grow out of those particular places. And that way, I think a lot of the images and characters have come from available mythologies that exist in those places. And other characters have come from my own narrative.
Such a question. There are many
I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of the New to You Show. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho. With me this week was...
I'm Mary Varn. You can find me on Twitter at Mary Varn.
All right. Also with us was...
Jules. You can find me on Twitter at Beautiful Jules.
And Keith Vincent. You can check me out on... you can check out some of my designs and artwork at earthlingkeith.tumblr.com.
All right.
If you want to.
So you can find our show at newtoyoushow.com. The Tumblr there shows some images from the pics that we're discussing and shows links on how you can find more. If you'd like to leave a comment, you can leave it there on the blog or whatever it is, the Tumblr. And you can also leave us a review on iTunes if you're so inclined, if you'd listen to us through that. So again, thanks a lot for listening. We'll come back next week with 2 more picks in Parental Influence. It may not be new, but it might be new to you.
Been peddling too long, and I'm not a human kickstand. Need time to rest, but I gotta keep moving. This pitiful life is all about the music. 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 You can allow yourself to hang from those strings they pull too often. I believe I can make it if I don't continue to let my heart harden. The road to success isn't always how you see it. Sleepless nights tossing and turning, waiting for music to reveal its secrets, eating away at the lining that separates me from paralysis. Someone's tipping the scale to give me a heavier load. Suppose I'll fall victim to work and let the life of music go. Nobody cries for the loss of a washed up John Doe. One hit wonder, a buzz.